David Reid. This is my colleague Danny J. Lewis, who is our lead course developer, and we're here to answer any questions you may have about Point Blank Music School. Welcome to Forum Live. So this week we're going to be looking at working with audio in Logic. So I'll pass you over to the expert, Danny.
Right, yeah, not specifically audio, but we are going to be working with Logic this week. And what I've got is another project, because I'm going to take you on a little tour of some of the things that I've done here. And then also we've got something which is in response to a question from one of the guys, and we're going to cover something in Ableton very briefly later. But for the moment in Logic, I've got a project here which is a track that I released on a label called Afro Art Records. And this is called Red Light, and this is entirely using Logic plugins. There's no third-party stuff here at all. This is a very simplistic track, really, in terms of what's happening musically. And there's a particular stab that I want to investigate. I'm going to show you what I did to actually create that sound. I'm also going to look at a couple of other things in terms of how the track's built. So I'm just going to play this for you now. Some of you might know it, some of you may not. So I'm going to dive in when the stab comes in. So it's kind of busy. So we're going to go there and I'll show you here. Just going to bring up the stab that I'm talking about. And what I'll do is I'll solo this so you can hear it in isolation. This has got some automation. So what I'll do is I'll open it up, see what we got going on here. Interestingly, the automation that I had seems to have gone. Do get some funny things going on here sometimes. So if I just take a look at that, I'm going to see if I can manually bring this open for you. So on the original track, it was opening up here. So you've got a warmer kind of texture at the beginning. And I'm going to open that up manually so you can hear it's getting brighter now. Now the real thing about this particular stab is the tuning. You know, I've talked about this sort of stuff before. And the notes basically are being treated. There's basically one note per stab here. I'll show you on the piano roll in the MIDI. So for each note, you know, we've got several notes occurring, and this isn't using any kind of plugin or chord device like in Ableton. I've actually got this on the oscillators. Now, you can see on this synth patch that I've created something with 3 oscillators. You can tell that because of this triangle mixer in the center here, the ES2. So you can see that we're hearing all 3 equally. I'm just going to break this down so you can hear each oscillator in isolation. So that's the first one. That's a pulse wave. I'm going to bring the second oscillator. Now this one is a pulse wave, but I've adjusted the pulse width. So that's it on its own there. The semitone tuning there is plus 14 semitones. So it's got this really kind of dark, mysterious vibe to it. I'll bring on the third one. So that's plus 15 semitones. So it's quite a unique set of tuning there. The original note, then you've got plus 14 and then plus 15. So for every one of the notes on the piano roll, you've got these extra notes being created. So that's what's happening. The third oscillator is another pulse with the pulse width here adjusted. So you can see how it becomes a bit more plucky as we adjust the pulse width there. So I just took it a bit closer to the actual square. So if we go all the way over here, that's a square wave. So as you adjust this, it thins it out, makes it sound a bit more plucky. So all 3 together. So I'll open the filter for you. It was quite interesting actually. This track, when it came out, it was remixed by quite a few producers. And some of the producers really struggled with doing the remix because of the tuning in the chord. You know, they were only provided with the kind of composite sound, you know, the audio parts. And so musically it's quite a hard one to work with, but it actually makes absolute sense in the original production. So that's what's going on with that. That's an ES2 stab. So 3 oscillators, 1 square wave, 2 pulse waves here with slightly adjusted widths. The rest of it's pretty conventional. The filter that's being used to take away some of the frequencies. This is using the, just having a look here at the routing, this is envelope 2, which is basically over here. That's what I'm using to adjust that. So you guys, if you take a look at the settings, you could copy that for yourselves and get a similar patch. So, you know, the key thing is the tuning there and the actual oscillator types. Now, another thing that I used on this track is vocals, and you can see here, these are from the Apple library. It's quite funny because I had a lot of people saying to me, who's your singer? And if you've got Logic, if you go to Media and you go to Loops, go to Vocals, there's a massive library of vocals here. So basically, these were taken from that. You can see here, Andre, Improv. So inside the Logic library, there's loads of vocals that you can use. So, you know, I'm going to suggest to you guys, if you haven't checked them out, go and have a look because there's a lot of very usable vocals in there. So also, in terms of what's going on here, the beats themselves, I'm going to solo here. I've got these as a group. Any of you guys are familiar with working with Logic, you can route out the individual drum tracks into a bus. So this is like putting everything onto one fader. That's something that I do quite a lot. So I've got all of my drum elements here. These are individually split out on the Ultra Beat. And I've also got another set of sounds coming from the EXS24. Everything's going through onto one fader. This is bus 6. So bus 6 is over here soloed. And what I was trying to do with this is to get a nice kind of crisp kind of flavour to it with a little bit of a kind of slight edge. So on the channel strip here, you can see that I've got a couple of things going on. I've got the overdrive, which is basically boosting 4.5 dBs here. So it's adding some extra harmonics to the sound, so it sounds rougher. And what I'll do is I'll take it off, and I'll also take the compressor off. So that's the pure drums as they were. I'll engage the overdrive here. So you can hear it's got a slightly extra kind of raw edge to it. I'll turn it off again. And then back on. So for me, you know, I like to process my drums. You know, I don't always do it blatantly, obviously. They can be really subtle, you know, kind of extra textures. And then the other thing was the compressor. So I'm going to bring this back on. And you can see what's going on with this. So this is being used to just bind the beats together a little bit tighter. I'll bypass that. Just slight difference, you can feel it, it sort of gels together more nicely. So other aspects of this, you know, it's a very, very simple track. You can see musically that, you know, these yellow sections here, this particular tone of yellow, this is a musical side. So you've got only 3 main musical elements. The rest of it is the drums and the vocals and some kind of space around the sound. The treatment for the stab sound, I placed this basically, let me just have a look on this on its own. I'm going to unsolo the beats there. So this is running through Space Designer. So we've got this nice reverb space there. And it's being compressed as well. Just to cover the variation when we've got the filter opening and closing. So it's compressing that, keeping that balanced. In terms of other things going on, there's a shaker loop, which is an Apple loop, block, which is programmed. This is the EXS24 Latin kit, so I'll show you here. So just a really simple little bit of programming there. A little bit of automation every now and again with the vocals, the effects. See if I can show you that. So you see over here, this is a vocal, and this is feeding into a reverb that I've got over here called Big Verb. So you can see the automation. So So you can hear that big sense of space after the vocal there, and that's automated. So it's drier first, and then once again with a big splash of reverb. So that's been used to kind of bridge over that section. You know, I don't always use things like fills or crashes to transition to different areas. I'll often use a sound with a big splash of reverb so that the reverb decay kind of fills the gaps and takes it to the next section. So I just want to see if anybody's got any questions about this particular project.
I haven't been any yet. So
No? Okay. How are we doing for time? Any other questions? We've got the Ableton thing, haven't we? I'll do that later. So, I mean, working with Logic, you know, it's one of the good things about Logic is the mixer is very nicely arranged. You can see everything that's going on. So I'll take you on a tour of some of the things that I've done here. If you take a look at the individual channel strips, a lot of these you can see EQs. So on things like the snare, I'll solo this. This snare was actually a very thick snare. And I'll take the EQ off. So basically back on again. That's thinning the sound out, and the reason why I've got that is because there is a kick, and the kicks have, you know, it's a very thick sound. So basically, when the kick and the snare are triggered at the same time, I wanted to make sure that the snare wasn't jumping up in volume. So here, the low cut is being used on there, and also I've got a little area here where I've reduced the frequency energy as well, about 305 hertz. So once again, off. That's going to sound messier on a big system. So that's cleaner now, gives it more space. So onto the clap, that's actually quite bare, but I'll show you here. The clap is being routed through over to bus 1. So this is a send, and bus 1 is a reverb, that's a platinum verb. So that's a send and return configuration. So the clap is dry over here, and then we're balancing the affected signal back over here on the right hand side. Hi-hats 909. This is the EXS 909 drum kit, which is a nice version of the Roland 909 drum kit. It's a classic sound. And Selena strings, just to provide some tension, some musical variation going on. You got a question?
There was someone sent me an email before the forum actually. Someone called Gareth. And he asked, how do you achieve that reversed reverb technique used on vocals before the vocal happens?
Oh, okay. Well, if I could get that on one of these, there's different ways to do it. So let's just have a look. Let's try and find a good vocal to do this. Yeah, okay, this is probably going to be a good one. So let's take a look. Just going to expand this down. So there's the vocal. So you can see that. Just going to focus literally on looping this section. So what we could do is to basically flip the audio, and then we could apply a massive reverb to it. So basically the start of this becomes the end, and so you've got like a reverb tail that's going to occur after, and then we could flip the audio around again. You know, that's what we could do. So what I'll do is I'll basically process this. Let's find a reverb. Just going to get a big reverb decay on here. Just going to open up the highs. This audio file here, what I need to do is to flip this round. So I'm just going to double click here. This is an Apple loop. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, in fact, I'm going to turn it into a new audio file. So we're going to go to Audio, Convert Regions to New Audio Files. I'm going to stick this on the in the project folder. I'm just going to say here, Vox for reverse reverb. I'm going to turn this into an AIFF file, so it's not going to be an Apple loop anymore. I'm going to keep everything else as it is and save that out. So you can see it looks different now. Now what it has done is that it's changed the timing, because the original was an Apple loop that was actually being synchronized to tempo. I'm not going to worry about that, because I can still use this for the texture, and then I'll just get the original audio and just copy it over. So I can now double click, I can go to functions, reverse. So this is reversed now, and I'm just going to take a section over here. In fact, what I'll do with this one is I'll just mute this for the moment. So you can hear what's going on with that. We've reversed it, we've got the start of the vocal here. If I put the mix up, so you can hear that decay that's occurring at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this so that I've got a nice long decay. I'm going to bounce it out, and then I'm going to bring that in and then cut and paste it and put it before the original vocal. That's one of the ways you can do it. Just going to bring that reverb time up a bit. So something like that's going to work nicely. So what I'll do is I'll find this. It's going to get quite close to it. Just going to bounce this out. So you're going to turn it into a new audio file and reverse, reverb. Let's bring this out. So these we can actually get rid of this. Bring that back over here where it was before. Unmute. So we're going to come back out, take that solo off. And what I need to do now is to basically set up a new audio track. I'll make it stereo. We can see that the vocal starts here. So what I need to do is to find that vocal. There it is, it's in the bounces folder. Let's just bring this over. And this just needs to be reversed. So once again, functions, reverse. We've got this now, we can lead this into the point where the other vocal starts. So it just needs a little bit of fine tuning, and going to see how that sounds. Going to adjust this. So solo both of these. So it just needs a bit of fine tuning in terms of placing those two. But that's the technique. I don't want to dwell too much on getting that perfect, because there's other things we want to cover. So you can see there that we've got this nice reverse lead up to it. Fine tuning would be just placing that better, maybe adjusting the fade in as well. So I don't know if you guys know this, but you can take the fade in over here on the inspector. If I just quickly make that a bigger number, say about 2000, can you see now that there's a fade in at this point? So we could adjust the kind of slope of that coming in to where the vocal hits. There's also a tool you can use if you push escape. You go to the fade tool, you can get in there and you can pick it up, and you can play around with the curve as well. So you can see the fade in curve. You can adjust that. So instead of being linear, it can become exponential, sort of accelerate. So there's a little bit of fine tuning to be done, but that's a way to do it. So you've got like a reverse reverb flavour. So how are we doing?
Yeah, there's a couple of questions come in. Just to reiterate, we're here, we're live. This is all about you guys and kind of getting the answers that you want and talking about the things that you're interested in. So any questions you've got about the material that we cover on the courses, get in touch, let us know, and we'll try and tackle them. We're on air for about another sort of 10, maybe 15 minutes. If you've got questions about the courses and how they work and which course would be right for you, I'll try and tackle those. If you've got technical questions, then Danny's your man for that kind of thing. So yeah, just to tackle a couple of the things that have come in. Oh yeah, also tell us where you are. We've got students all over the world, so if you are texting in a question, maybe give us a quick shout and tell us where you are. It's always interesting to know where people are located. But yeah, a couple of questions that have come in, Danny. Black Wax 1 was asking, What was the thought process behind the strange tuning on the stabs that you were demonstrating earlier on? And why does it work?
I'll tell you what I did on that one. There wasn't even any thought process at all. Literally, it was a case of, I quite often do this. I sit with either something in Ableton, like the chord device, or a synth with multiple oscillators, and I will sit and I will just trigger the note and I will adjust the tunings of the oscillators until I find something that I like the sound of. You know, there's no theory involved in it at all, because my understanding of music theory isn't good enough for me to know what I'm doing. I literally just do everything by ear. So it was a case of starting off with the one note, then taking the second oscillator, adjusting the tuning until I felt a vibe that sounded good. And I would always go up and down on the keys then, just to make sure it sounds good as a little sequence. Then I'll start with the third oscillator and start adjusting and seeing what happens. So it's kind of trial and error, but with a sort of educated ear at the end of the day. There's a certain vibe that I know I like the sound of. It doesn't necessarily mean everybody else is going to like the sound of it, but in that case it was literally just sitting there, playing the notes, adjusting the oscillators up, and then finding something, all right, I like that vibe. Let me try the sequence now on top of the beat. So that was the way that worked.
And Mark Me Up was asking, can you recommend any online resources for deep house chords and progressions? I can answer that one to some extent. I don't know if you're a student, Mark, or if you've taken courses with us before, but if you haven't, then you should definitely check out the pro producer courses that we do on Logic and Ableton. There's a deep house course on Ableton Live, and there's a deep and soulful house course on Logic. There's some great resources in there in terms of how you can create those kind of sounds, those kinds of chord progressions, and just the vibe that you find in those kind of genres. Also check out the new electronic music composition course as well, EMC. That's got some great stuff on it if you're looking for more of a kind of musical kind of flavour rather than the sort of technical skills. So those would be two recommendations in terms of what we offer. And as we talked about on the Friday forum last week, one of the great things about learning to sort of develop your own sounds and create your own sounds, and learning a bit more about instruments like the ES2 or analog and operator in Ableton, is that you start creating your own unique kind of sound rather than relying on sample packs and presets that everyone's got access to. So that can be quite a good way to define your sound. And then a user called Soulful Beats has sent us a message as well. What advice can you provide for EQ? I think specifically he's looking for advice on kind of kick drums. He says there's so many bands. Should we just rely on our ears?
Maybe I should flip over to this other project then, because there's an Ableton project that I've got, and I've EQ'd the kick in a particular way there actually, so that'll probably be a good example. So I'm just going to just show you here just quickly. I just lined up the reverse reverb there, so that it should sound pretty good now. Let me just quickly just do that so we can listen. So that's a bit better than it was before anyway, just to show you. So I'm going to close Logic and just dive into Ableton, and we've got this. Nick, who was the guy that asked the question before?
I think his name was Mark.
Was it Mark?
No,
okay.
Might be wrong actually.
No. One of the guys you might be tuned in has asked about a particular vibe similar to what Milton Jackson was covering, which is this very heavily swung, nice kind of groove with sort of choked elements in the drum kit. So I've got something with that in mind. And I was working with the kick on this one. And you can see here, if you take a look at the EQ, so you can see that I've actually boosted a couple of frequencies here. And what it is with kick drums is that it's almost impossible to say what you need to do, because there are so many different characteristics that you may want to exaggerate or take away depending on what else is going on in the tune. So if you've got other elements that are recurring, it's either you're trying to exaggerate a certain texture or you're trying to take bits away to help it sit with the other elements. And on this particular track idea here that was being used to demonstrate this technique, what I wanted to do was to make the kick a bit more pronounced, a bit more exaggerated, So I'm going to show you here. I'll play you the whole thing first anyway. So you can hear that. Now what I was trying to do with this is to make it sound kind of old and raw. So if you take a look at the kick, so this is a 909 kick. It's going through some other processes. You can see it's going through a saturator here. But if I take off the EQ, you hear there's a slightly more raucous kind of top end to that. See over here, I was boosting the 5K, and then also there's somewhere around here, this one was about 400 hertz. So I'm just trying to bring out a little bit more of an exaggerated character there. And when I was doing that, I was doing a technique that I use, that a lot of other guys use, which is to basically, I'll do it with band 5. So look, if we do this, I'll turn off these others. So say for example, I'm looking for something to work with, and I don't know, quite what it is just yet. But if I trigger the sound, and then I can pick this up, and then I'm going to go up. So I'm hearing certain things are existing in that sound. So I'm hearing a sort of clickier high end there. But remember, this is all based on what's in the sound. If there's not loads of brightness in the sound, when I bring up the highs, I'm not going to be adding tons of brightness. There's always got to be something in there to be exaggerated. So actually, I was bringing out some noise and texture in the sample there. So that's a technique that I use and a lot of people will use. We adjust, we go up, we listen, and then when we find, like for example over here, you might think that that might actually be clashing with something like a bass sound or something, somewhere else in the tune. So in that case, instead of boosting it, we could bring it down and cut. So that's a technique, you exaggerate to discover what's in the sound. Lift it up and down, just see if you can pick this kind of tone area, and then you bring it down to cut it and take it away from something, or you might leave it up to exaggerate it. So that's like a deliberate technique. So that's a real classic when it comes to working with sounds. So let's get this back where it was. I'm going to undo a few times here so I get it exactly. There we go. Right, so just coming back to the reason for doing this. So we had a question about using chokes on drum samples, and this is the programming for the beats. So what's happening with this is it's a common question. A lot of people like this kind of swing thing going on there. There are two sounds that are working in a choke group, and that means that basically only one of them can play at once. And this is a really nice way to get a good interaction between your sounds. So the two sounds that are in the choke group are the closed hat and the open hat. And this is a classic thing with drum machines. So if we have a listen, solo, so there's the open hat. There's the closed one. So what's happening is only one can play at once. The setting for this is contained within the actual chain of the drum rack. And this is literally a preset drum rack in live. All right, so this is the Roland 909 drum kit. So it's a classic drum kit. And by default, if you have a look on the left-hand side of the rack, if I turn on the in and out routing here, you can see that there is a choke column. All right, so choke column is over here. You can see that the closed hat and the open hat have this set to number 1. So you can select a choke group. This is set to 1. So let me show you what it sounds like if we have none. So we're going to take it out. Listen to the decay of the open hat. So it's going on for longer. So they're overlapping. So if I switch the choke group on, number 1 for both of these, you can feel that kind of pulling, pushing kind of texture. It's got a lurching kind of vibe to it, and that's what really makes that groove. So with that all together, let me take them out of the choke group as well. That's actually quite nice too. So you can have a contrast between the two. So look, but that real classic sort of New York kind of vibe. Let me take that out of there. Take these both back into that. got that real authentic texture going on, and that's because of the choke group. So you're limiting only one sound can play at once of those that you put into that choke group, and that's a great technique to use for all kinds of stuff. Say for example, you've got loads of vocal samples that you've dropped in on a drum rack, then set them all to a choke group, and then only one can play at once. You've got this nice choppy stuttered, like Todd Edwards kind of flavour. So Todd Edwards would be having loads of collage of samples with no overlaps. They're all in a choke group, so they're literally only one can play at once, and they're chopping between them.
I think it was Mark that asked that question.
Was it Mark?
Yeah,
okay.
Is
he online?
He is, yeah.
Okay.
He was going to ask you a question.
Just tell him that I've got some real heavy swing on here. I'm just going to zoom in. I'm going to put the grid onto 16s. We looked at this kind of stuff, the swing aspect, I think, on a previous video. And you can see here against a regular 16th grid that those hats and the snare here, they're very heavily swung. So they're moved over to the right. So that's what creates that really nice flavour. A couple of tweaks that I made on the drum kit. The closed hat, I shortened decay. That's a real important part of this. I'll show you. If we go and solo these. So the closed hat, real short and percussive. Originally, it was longer. So I've taken the decay how it was originally. So you've got a thicker, longer sound. I brought that shorter. So that's that real kind of New York style clicky closed hat. And the kick drum, you can see the EQ. I put a saturator on there as well, so I'll show you that. It's solo. That's how the 909 sounded originally. So with the EQ and the saturator, just to give it that real hefty kind of old school kind of vibe. Everything in this drum kit is running through these two devices as well. So vinyl distortion, so it sounds like it's coming off of a record. So you can hear the little kind of noise and clicky texture there. And the compressor as well. So this is just giving it that sort of gel again. I'll take it off and then back on. You'll hear the hats are coming out a bit more when I'm running them through the compressor. So yeah, the programming, that's the grid there. You can watch that back on the video. You can see what's going on with that. And then a little skippy snare on top, which is here. And it's just all about that swing, basically. So these are interacting in the beats. I'll take that off, take the stab off. So this extra skippy snare filling in the gaps there. So that's that kind of flavour, that sort of DJ sneaky, sort of jacking-y kind of vibe.
Nice. So yeah, everyone was really shy to start with, and we had no questions for ages, and now everyone's messaging us. So yeah, quick shout to Antonio from Verona. Thanks for watching, and thanks for getting in touch. He was asking how you find inspiration for a track. Is it a sample, or yeah, what sort of gets you started? And he was asking, is this process covered in the Deep House course? I'll answer that bit briefly. Because I speak to people a lot about this on the phone. I think one of the great things about these online courses is if you're making music on your own at home, it's really easy to get into a sort of a routine, and you end up doing the same kind of processes and the same sort of approach every time you sit down to make a track. One of the great things about these online courses is it really kind of snaps you out of that, and you find about how other people work, and it can maybe expose you to some new techniques and sort of inspiring ways of doing things that maybe you hadn't thought of. So in that respect, I think, yeah, you'd find some really interesting stuff on the Deep House course. But yeah, Danny, what sort of inspires you to get started?
Well, I mean, come back to the Deep House course. There's a variety of different approaches that we use on the course. And it doesn't always, you don't always start off with the beats. You could start off with some ideas, some samples, some textures. There's just lots of different possibilities, really, at the end of the day. Don't know what's going on there. We've got some weird feedback going on. Is that someone's phoning us up? We've got some kind of spirit in the room. But so basically, the different approaches, there's a variety of different ways that you could do it. So it's nice to have the choice, and particularly with Ableton, bringing in something like this, for example, the launch pad. And we do bring that in on the Deep House course on Ableton as well. So it's, for me, in terms of inspiration personally, do you know what? I can't even say. I've got no idea where my inspiration comes from, because I just constantly, I'm one of these kind of guys who's just constantly thinking about making something. If I stop making music, I turn into a little bit of a grumpy old man. So basically, every day, first thing in the morning tends to be the time when I do stuff, because I have to fit it outside of the point blank work that I do. So I'll be on the laptop, headphones. I can't even say what it is. I just have to make music. I can't do anything else. So I will work on a tune. If it works, if that's great, I'll carry on with it. If it doesn't work, I scrap it. You know, I'm really one for sort of trying to get rid of the rubbish quite early. You know, there's no point sort of flogging something if it's just not working. Just kind of get rid of it. And there are loads of different ways of working. Some people will have maybe 4 projects on the go at once, and then you rotate stuff, so it stops you getting bored. You know, if you feel things are getting stagnant, move to the next project and sort of keep rotating. You know, everybody works in different ways. You know.
There was a quick question from Blackwax as well, was asking about if there's something similar to a choke group in Cubase 5.
Yes, Groove Agent 1. Just trying to remember off the top of my head. It's been a little while since I've used Cubase, but I am like 97% certain that there is the ability to do exactly the same thing. It's probably described in a different way. Just give me a shout on Twitter or something, and I'll find out an answer for you. Yeah, I'm so certain there is a way to do it.
We're kind of, yeah, we're sort of approaching the end now. So, yeah, just to kind of sum up, hopefully you've got the questions answered that you wanted to get answered. If you haven't, we do this every week. So we'll be back next Friday. Danny and myself will be here answering questions and demoing whatever you want us to demo. So up until now, I think most of the tracks we've done have been based on kind of, you know, your material, but that doesn't mean that, you know, you just have to have an interest in kind of house tracks, or, you know, if you wanted to see how something worked in a different genre, then obviously, you know, we do courses in everything from trance to drum and bass to dubstep to electro. So if you were looking to see something that's maybe related to one of those genres, let us know. Either add something to the comments here or drop us an email, you know, give us a call, however you want to get in touch. It's always really nice to hear from people all over the world. And as I said, you know, part of the purpose of Friday Forum Live is to give you guys a chance to sort of direct things and take them in the direction you want to go in and get the answers that you're looking for. So yeah, get in touch, let us know what you'd like to see, what you'd like to hear, and if you've got any questions about the courses, then we'd love to hear from you. We should probably wrap up, I guess. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and as I said, get in touch, let us know what you'd like to see on the next Friday Forum Live. Thanks a lot, see ya.